The major event over the rest of the year is certainly the US elections. Now, how is this going to impact on the rand? From the market perspective, we're looking at three issues. We're looking at who will be controlling the presidency, who will take the House, and who will control the Senate. At this stage, it's obviously Trump versus Biden for the presidency. We're all following that very closely. For the Senate, currently that is held by the Republicans. 35 out of 100 senators are up for election. The question is, will the Democrats be able to wrest control from the Republicans? The House at this stage is controlled quite strongly by the Democrats. Market expectations are that will remain the case. The entire House is up for election, as it is every 2 years. Betting odds at this stage are strongly in favor of Biden taking the election. On predicted.com, he's running at around 62-63%. That's up marginally over the past couple of weeks following the debate and Trump's illness. The Democrats are also favored to take the Senate. The betting odds there is now 59%. That has risen quite significantly over the past couple of weeks. And then, as I've mentioned, the betting odds for the House very strongly in favor, over 80% for the Democrats to continue to control the House. Now, how has the rand reacted to past election results? Well, the first point to note is that generally the rand reaction hasn't been all that major. This may surprise some. The thinking there really is that the event itself is probably not as so important for the markets as it hyped up to be in the general media. We all watch it far more closely than its impact on financial markets deserves. But looking at the rand's reaction, a 1-day reaction, a 5-day reaction, how did the rand react to the previous election winners? A couple of points to note. First of all, Trump's win in 2016 created an outside reaction on the rand. Okay. Secondly, what we can observe is generally a Democrat's win has been favorable for the rand. Okay, so dollar rand has fallen on a Democrat's win, while a Republican win has generally resulted in dollar rand upside. Third point to note is the size of the election victory. So a clean sweep, such as the Democrats in 2008 or the Republicans in 2016, seem to have created much larger moves. The thinking there is that if one party controls the presidency, the House, and the Senate, they have a much bigger ability to push their agenda through, and so the influence is all that much greater. The last point to note from the historical results is that contested elections, and by contested I mean elections that were close, tended to also have a bigger impact on financial markets. In other words, if the financial markets didn't price in a win already because they weren't sure who was going to win, then you could get an outside reaction. If it's pretty clear who's going to win, then probably no major reaction to the markets after the event. So how do we expect the rand to react this time around? We've sketched out 4 scenarios. First of all, on a Democrats clean sweep, so blue sweep, they win the House, the Senate, and the presidency. Now, our expectation is that would be negative for the dollar, but strengthen US equities slightly. The net result there is that dollar rand would move down, perhaps quite considerably, breaking through the bottom end of previous ranges. In a less extreme scenario where Biden wins the presidency, but the Republicans still control the House, we'll see very similar moves, but probably not nearly as aggressive. So we've sketched out there as dollar rand getting down to the bottom end of its ranges, but not breaking out. On a Trump victory, so assuming Trump takes the presidency, Senate could go either way in that scenario, but the House would remain with the Democrats. We would see that as resulting in dollar strength, higher US equities. Net result there is for slightly meaningful rand weakness, dollar rand pushing up to the upper end of its ranges. Now, what influences our thinking here? Okay, well, on the dollar, the key issue really is Trump's trade wars and his antagonism towards China in particular. So a stronger Republican victory, a Trump victory, would be negative for Asian currencies, hence be strengthening for the dollar and hence feeding through into the rand. The thinking on equities is more complex. There's a lot more issues at play there. Some of these scenarios might not have such major aggressive moves in equities overall, but would certainly impact some sectors over the other. But how come our first three scenarios all see equities moving upwards? The thinking there is really around risk aversion. There is still a major scenario that there is no clear election winner going even as far as into January. So it's a contested election result. This is the market's biggest fear, and if we did get that, we would see serious risk aversion. We would see dollar strengthening, the dollar safe haven coming through, we'd see equities weaken substantially, and that would all result in a substantial upward move in dollar rand, a substantial risk off event. It's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out. The election is on the 3rd of November. We should hopefully have results by the 4th of November. If there is no clear result, then expect a lot of market volatility and potentially rand weakness.